The next hindrance is Tina, Sloth and Torpor. I mentioned something about that last night. The Sloth and Torpor is another aspect of ill will, because it's just a way of escaping from the task. We just go into sort of this dull, woozy state. We don't really experience the pain of existence so much. We're not experiencing the pleasure either. After a while, the sloth and torpor, you will find, is not valuable at all. It's not worthwhile. It's just wasting time. But even though that prisoners in jail, as I said yesterday, have the saying, an hour extra sleep is an hour off the sentence. In life, you can say, an extra hour's sleep is an hour off my life. Can you afford to abandon so many months, so many years of your life? But I worked out some time ago that if, on average, if people sleep 8 hours a day, an extra hour's sleep is 1/16 of your life thrown away. If you live 80 years, that's 5 years of your life thrown away. Instead of sleeping 8 hours, if you just sleep 7 hours a day, you actually gain 5 more years of life. Not just years tacked on at the end, when you're so weak and sick and old it doesn't really matter, but quality years. If you just sleep 1 hour less every day, it's the equivalent of 5 extra years of life. Wouldn't you like to have more quality time, quality years in your life? So this is why, like sloth and torpor, you're just wasting so much time, so much opportunity. All Buddhist traditions say that the human life is so valuable, so precious. And especially a human life where you've met like the Buddhist teachings, you met the Dhamma, you have the opportunity to practice. You don't realize just how many lifetimes and how much merit you've had to do just to get here. It's not just paying, $240 or $50 or something to get here. You paid lifetimes of karma to get into this meditation retreat. So don't waste any moment of it in sloth and torpor. And as someone once told me, and it's what I keep on repeating, in sloth and torpor, it's like going along a road. You come to a fork in that road. To the left leads to sloth and torpor, to the right leads to peacefulness but full awareness. Sloth and torpor always arise when you take that left turn, that left fork in the road. Explaining it that way, being mindful, you'll know what I mean. There's a point in your meditation where actually you choose to go into sloth and torpor. Basically you give in. And if you can just see that point, you can avoid going on that left fork and go to that right fork, which is far more pleasant. Peaceful, but awake, but aware. That fork again is where you're about to let go of the doer, but you also give up the knower as well. The right fork, you let go of the doer, but you keep the knower. Fully aware, but doing nothing. Fully aware, beautiful rest, free from doing. It's a beautiful thing to experience. That's sloth and torpor. Again, you don't get anywhere in sloth and torpor except just wasting time. The next hindrance is restlessness and worry, which is one of the subtle ones. So worry, again, is part of guilt. More like the doubt about guilt, where you're concerned, did I do this right, did I do this wrong? But the main part of that hindrance is the restlessness of the mind. And that restlessness of the mind is always due to the fact we do not appreciate the beauty of contentment. We do not appreciate just the sheer pleasure of doing nothing. That we have a fault-finding mind. rather than a mind of gratitude, which appreciates what's already there. This is a training which I deliberately do in my monastery. Usually every Monday is after the weekend. Mondays is supposed to be a day we don't do any work at the monastery, a free day for meditation. I always try and go on a walk around the monastery, not just to check up on all the things which need to be done next week, but just to look at all the things which have already been done. Not looking for faults, but looking for the results of all the hard work which has been already achieved. So completely looking at the monastery in a different way. Other times I have to go around looking at all the things which need to be done. It's the opposite of the fault-finding mind, which is what we've developed in Western society, and in Eastern society as well. It's like looking at the government, looking like Mr. Howard. Instead of all the things he does wrong, deliberately looking at all the good things which he's done, and all the service which he's given to the country. Gratitude rather than fault-finding. I don't think there's a paper in this country who doesn't write articles from the fault-finding mind, rather than the grateful mind. And if it's restlessness you want to overcome, the fault-finding mind will give you so much ammunition for restlessness that you'll never be short of faults in what you're experiencing right now. And if what you're experiencing right now is not perfect enough, you'll go somewhere else. Going somewhere else is called restlessness. Going somewhere else, anywhere else except here, is restlessness. Staying at home is the opposite. How can you stay at home? Only if you can appreciate the benefits and the comforts of home. Only if you can appreciate the benefits and the comforts of this present moment, of this meditation object you're experiencing right now. If you have a fault-finding mind with the breath when that's your object, the breath will never be comfortable. You can hold it there through willpower. If you haven't got contentment with what you're doing, eventually the mind will go somewhere else. It'll be restlessness. It can't stay with the breath. You're pushing it onto the breath, but it won't keep there because you're doing it the wrong way. The way to overcome restlessness is the appreciation of contentment. Change the way you look at this moment. Instead of looking at it, looking for the faults, looking for what's wrong with this breath now, what's wrong with this body now, what's wrong with this retreat center now, what's wrong with me right now. If you look at it that way, restlessness is caused. If you look at the contentment, isn't it wonderful that I don't have to do anything now? Isn't it wonderful that I don't have to give a talk in a few more moments? Isn't it wonderful I don't have to do any building, I don't have to please anybody, I don't have to be smart and funny? Isn't it wonderful I don't have to do anything right now? It's appreciating contentment. All I've got to do in the whole world, this is how I think very often, all I have to do in the whole world, in the whole universe, in the whole scheme of things, is just to watch this one breath happening now. It's just so easy to do. Nothing else is demanded of me at all. But just to be able just to watch one breath, it's just so easy and it's full of contentment. It's amazing. I'm so grateful. I have got like hours where all I have to do is just watch one breath. That's why being a monk is a great job. It's just so simple at times. When it's what I'm supposed to be doing, is just watching one breath. It's the simplest job in the world, and people allow me to do it. Thank you very much. They even praise me for doing it. They feed me for doing it. Or just watching one breath. So it's contentment with what you're doing. When you're content with what you're doing, you stay there. Discontent leads to restlessness. So if restlessness comes up into your mind, know it's because you've developed the fault-finding mind. rather than the mind which looks for contentment, which is grateful that you have this one breath to look at. And develop that contentment in the moment. Go out into this retreat center and just be content just with the grass, with the bricks, with the food, with the sunshine. Isn't it wonderful just being here? Isn't it wonderful just being on this mat? Isn't it wonderful just being with this breath? And there you've overcome restlessness. The very refined hindrance of restlessness often comes up right at the end when you get samadhi nimittas coming up. You just can't leave them alone. You just mess around with them. You just can't be content just with the samadhi nimitta as it's appearing right now. You want something more, you get excited. Restlessness is one of those hindrances which can so easily destroy that samadhi nimitta. You've got there already. You don't have to do anything more. Leave it alone. Just be content with it and it will develop by itself. That's what contentment is, just complete laziness. Just sitting here, just watching this samadhi nimitta just blossom into a jhana. You don't do anything. If it takes an hour, if it takes 5 minutes, if it never happens, you're content. That's the way to get into jhanas. Restlessness at that end means the nimitta is not stable. Comes and goes. That's a sign of restlessness in the mind. If you can sustain attention effortlessly, that's a sign that restlessness has been overcome. The last of the hindrances is doubt, vicikiccha. Doubt on two areas. First of all, the instructions. What am I supposed to do? And hopefully that it's my job to overcome that aspect of the hindrance. The teacher's job by giving you very clear instructions. So you know exactly what to do when. The path is just very clear. But the biggest doubt with people is, can I do it? Is it possible for me to achieve these things? Am I really cut out for meditation? Other people, yeah, they may be okay, but not me. That doubt is a big hindrance for many meditators. I can't get rid of that doubt for you. I can only give stories like I gave the other night about people like Angulimala, the mass murderer. People like Patachara, who was a case for trauma counselling if ever there was one. All of these people without counselling got into jhanas and got into enlightenment experiences. And they had much more suffering than you've had. If they can do it, you can. So have confidence in yourself. Don't give rise to doubt. It doesn't matter how many years you've been meditating, getting nowhere. It doesn't matter at all. Who was it, I think, Anuruddha, one of the great monks in the time of the Buddha. I think 16 or 17 years, I think it was, before he became fully enlightened. And he was like practicing diligently every day. He was just one of the slow ones. If he can do it, so can you. And it does happen. I've seen this in the years I've been teaching meditation. Sometimes people practice for a long time and they think they're getting nowhere. They think they're getting nowhere. They think they're getting nowhere. But in truth, the seeds are growing under the ground and they just can't see it. And all it takes is one day, 1 hour, one meditation, and the seed pops up above the ground. And to their great surprise, they realize that all these years they've been struggling and thinking they're getting nowhere. They have indeed been getting somewhere. And it gives you confidence, which overcomes doubt. You can do it, you will do it, it's only a matter of time. So that's how to overcome doubt. You have to believe that though. So that's the talk on the 5 hindrances, especially the first 2, which I spent a lot of time on. Are there any questions about those talks? Okay. Overcoming the hindrance, does that mean forever or just during your meditation? You overcome them temporarily first of all. So you get sort of some freedom from them. And you know you got freedom from them if you get into deep meditation. And after you emerge from deep meditation, you'll notice that those hindrances are gone for a long time. The mind is very sharp, very still. You can sort of keep attention on one thing a long time. There's no ill will at all. You can't get angry at someone even if they hit you over the head. This is the result of good meditation. But after a while, depending on the depth and the time of that meditation, the hindrances come back again. It's like they've been in a boxing ring, they've just been slugged, and they're unconscious for a while. But eventually they come round again, and then they start playing their tricks again. But at least you know what it's like to have overcome those hindrances. And bit by bit, as you return to those stages more and more, the hindrances get weaker and weaker. The more times they get knocked out, the more sickly they become, the weaker they become. And it's a job of the enlightenment insights to overcome those hindrances once and for all. This is the age-old path of Buddhism. You slug them through this meditation, suppression, to give you the opportunities to get wisdom, to weaken the hindrances, until actually you see through them once and for all, and they're lying there on the ground, and they're done with, and they don't get up again. If the hindrances have been completely abandoned, you're enlightened. And if you're enlightened, there's just no difficulty in getting into jhanas. Because the obstacle's gone. That which is between you and jhanas has been completely eradicated.
Ajahn, is it possible that in trying to avoid the fault-finding mind, Buddhists can become blinkered, choosing to ignore wrongdoings of governments and individuals in an attempt to only see good? How can a balance be found between the fault-finding mind and a naive or laissez-faire attitude? Again, another really good question. The fault-finding mind and the mind which sees only good. It's important to know that both those types of minds are really at your disposal. And it's really interesting to know that you can look upon the world in either way. And then you ask, which way is the right way? Or is either of those ways right? And what makes it right? Really, it's only right according to your purpose. What you're actually doing, what your duties are. If it's your duty to be like the abbot of a monastery, that unfortunately they have to have a fault-finding mind now and again. You have to look for what the monks are doing wrong. But you have to look to what needs to be fixed up in the monastery. But that's in the role of being abbot. I've got to have a bit of fault-finding. But there's also the role I have, personally, of just being a monk. And in that role of just being a monk, that's why I let go of the fault-finding mind. And I can be peaceful, and I can just appreciate all the things which I've fixed up, and I can be at peace. There are some times when I'm spiritual director, and so I've got to do the jobs of like being a leader of the Buddhist community. And there you do have to have a fault-finding mind, get fix things up. So it's just ways of using your mind from time to time. And having the ability to choose which type of perception you want to use according to the different things you wish to achieve. The difficulty in human beings is that they get stuck in one way of perceiving, one way of looking. And you can see what happens if you get into the habit of a fault-finding mind. You see the faults in this and the faults in that, and once you get into that habit, into that way of looking, into that obsession, you can't see anything right in the government, in the world,
in other people, in any religion whatsoever, including Buddhism. You can't see anything right in the monks. You can't see anything right in yourself. And what you do then, if you can't see anything right, is you get depressed to the point of even suicidal. People who develop the fault-finding mind to that degree very often end up suiciding. And it's not that there's not faults there, but you've got to keep things in balance, in perspective. So here, because most of the time in the world we spend looking at faults, what do you do when you look at the newspaper? It's all about faults. What do you do when you see the news of an evening? It's all about faults. Very rarely do you actually see what goes right in the world. And it's interesting. Why is it that faults and mistakes sell? It's because people just they have a lot of like for see other people's faults, and we get blinkered into fault finding. You can be blinkered into seeing only the good as well. But as a meditation practitioner, you can do both, and you can do both at will. Whenever you think one is the appropriate one, that's what you do. But at the end of the day, at the end of each day, when you've done your business in the world, whether it's running a monastery, whether it's looking after a family or a business or just going out to work, at the end of the day, when you come back, there has to be a time when you rest. When you've fixed up as many faults as you can in your job, in your business, in your life, when you can rest. And to actually rest is where you have to let go of the fault-finding mind. To let go of it and just be at peace with all you've achieved so far. To be at peace with yourself. To be at peace with the world. To let go. Because it's only when you see the good that you can be at peace. So it's the end of the day type of attitudes I'm developing here with looking at the good. And especially when you go to sleep at night. Don't go to sleep at night thinking of all the faults which you've done during the day, all the faults which are waiting for you in the morning. Because you just go to bed and go to sleep just very agitated and not have any peace or real rest. You deserve rest in your life. You deserve happiness. Which is why when you look for the good, you're looking for happiness. You're balancing your life. And because there's not enough happiness in human beings, you really start to try and encourage less fault-finding, more praise. And if you're developing deep meditation, you find that the way of fault-finding is a way which will never lead to peace. You're actually looking for what's wrong, the stains in the mind. You'll always find them. But it'll never inspire you, and never give you peace, and never give you happiness. The way of jhana meditation is a way of happiness. It is developing the perceptions of happiness, the perceptions of beauty, where it's a beautiful present moment, whether it's a beautiful silence, the beautiful breath, the immense nimittas, immense in their beauty and their power, the beautiful mind. These are all like developing beautiful perceptions, bit by bit by bit. It is why, in this way of meditating, that you should be very careful if you are doing this type of meditation, not to bring up the perception of dukkha just when you're getting into jhanas. Because if you bring up that perception of dukkha, then you will never get into the jhanas. If when you get the samadhi nimitta, something comes up, oh, anicca, dukkha, anatta, you've blown it. Look at anicca, dukkha, anatta afterwards. Put that aside for a little while. Because you can see the beauty in the nimitta. And that is what will provide the glue to keep your attention one-pointed. On happiness, on beauty, on delight. If you see the faults in the nimitta, you can actually do that. Some people do that. They see the thoughts in it. Sometimes they do that. The nimitta comes up. This can't be right. Fault finding. If you just give it the benefit of the doubt, this must be the nimitta, then it becomes the nimitta. You're working with the mind here. The mind is very subtle. And if you wish to develop these jhanas, you'll find you'll get a lot of help by suspending the fault-finding mind during this retreat and developing the mind which sees only the good. And when you go back home afterwards, you can do the fault-finding mind, but not on the retreat. So this is how we define that balance. A laissez-faire, naive or laissez-faire attitude. It's amazing, like naivety. People think you're naive if you don't see the faults in the world. I think people are naive because they don't see the beauty in the world. They're laissez-faire because they don't pay enough attention to the beauty. They let the bad dominate their minds. That's laissez-faire. The world, as I mentioned in a simile many times, is like black lines on white paper of a children's colouring book. That's what the world is. And you colour it in with your perception and thought. What you actually add to the world forms 90% of your experience of the world. What you add to it. That's why two people can live in the same city, go through the same experiences. One could be happy, the other one could be sad. It's what they add is the most important ingredient in one's experience. When you know that, you can, if you want to, with a fault-finding mind, get out the black and the grey crayons, the sickly yellow crayons. If you want to have a good time, get out the bright yellows and oranges and brilliant greens. You can colour in your life whichever colour you want. Up to you. Someone once told me there's one fellow like this who could only see the good in everybody. And he would never say a bad word about anybody whatsoever. And so his mates at work got so fed up with him, they said, look, we're going to stump this fellow. And they sort of went up to him and said, say something good about Adolf Hitler. And it only took this guy a couple of seconds. He said he was a leader in his field. He always found something good to say about everybody. Next question. When one gets restless during meditation, it is difficult to continue. Please can you give some techniques as to improve this? Okay, the restlessness during the meditation is difficult to continue. There's obviously quite a few things you can do with restlessness during meditation. One is actually just to sit still and say, I'm going to sit till the end of the meditation period no matter what, because you're just standing your ground against restlessness. And if you stand your ground against restlessness, you say, I'm not going to move, it means you have to overcome restlessness another way, not the easy way of just moving somewhere else. And you've got a choice. You're either going to be restless and suffer through the period of the meditation, or you're going to discover the secret to overcoming restlessness. You put yourself in a situation where you have to learn. That was one of the great advantages of training as a monk in places like Thailand. Because Ajahn Chah made you sit and you just couldn't move. And no matter how restless you were, you had to sit there. And so you had the choice. Not of getting up and going. That wasn't a choice. That wasn't an option. The only choice you had was to find out what this restlessness really is and overcome it, or just to suffer hour on end with restlessness. So that's the first thing, is just stand your ground, or rather sit your ground when you got restless coming up, and then see, what is this restlessness? And you see it's a habit of the mind which is arising because you haven't developed contentment with what you're doing. The mind is looking for something else. You're not happy with the breath. You're not happy with the meditation. Whatever it is your object, you haven't developed happiness with it. The contentment. One way of developing that contentment, again, is using imagination, looking upon this period of meditation like going on holiday. Using the holiday perception, because holiday perceptions are things which everyone looks forward to. Once they go on holiday, hooray, I'm off. I'm in the plane. I'm going off to some beautiful desert island. No phones, no faxes, no one can get to me. Isn't it marvellous? You're very content when you go on holiday. When you go to this, imagine yourself just on a beautiful beach. And some time ago I went to Cocos Island. I just imagine that beautiful beach on Cocos Island. Not too hot, not too cold, no mozzies, just the wind just blowing over the ocean. Just sitting down there, no worries in the world. No one coming to ask you questions about meditation. Because all Muslims on that island. You just sit down there and just do absolutely nothing. Now just imagine that. Can't you find contentment in a place like that? It's full of contentment. And it's meditation, just the same. Here I am meditating, watching my breath. No one can come and ask me any questions on meditation. No one can telephone me. No one can tell me about what's gone wrong in the monastery. But no problems whatsoever. When you're just sitting down and meditate, you're free from just so many burdens, so many decisions, so many things to do. Isn't this bliss? It's going on holiday. Every time you start meditating, you say, boarding call now. You get onto your breath, and as soon as the breath takes off, you're away. You're on holiday. And I developed that perception so that I really enjoy the meditation. And I remember that I'm on holiday, so I enjoy every moment of it. I develop contentment with what I'm doing. Maybe you can develop that contentment from the very beginning of the meditation. You're not restless, you don't want to go anywhere because you're really happy where you are. Where else can you go anyway? This restlessness is completely illogical. It's a stupid way of trying to find happiness. You're always trying to find happiness somewhere else. That's what restlessness is. So if restlessness comes up, just look at it in the eye. Don't run away from restlessness, following it as it were. Just turn around, stand your ground and look at it. What is this restlessness? What do I want? It's another thing which I used to do as a young monk. If ever I was restless, I'd just use that as a mantra. The word I say to myself over and over again. What do I want? What do I want? What do I want? And if I actually found out something I want, then I'd say, what's that going to do anyway? What's the point? If I found out something I wanted, and then I realised that that wouldn't make me happy, that wouldn't solve the problem. I just saw just how stupid it all was, until I say I want nothing. And that was contentment. Wanting nothing else other than what you have now is the most beautiful happiness. You're just happy where you are. You don't want to be anywhere else in the whole world. You don't need anything else. Just this moment is more than enough. If you can appreciate the moments, you don't have restlessness anymore. But that's the root of overcoming restlessness. To develop that contentment, you've got to listen in the present moment. And to see, what is this present moment? That's why present moment awareness is just so important. You go outside and just walk in the garden. And just be present. Listen to every sound of the birds. Feel the wind over your face. Even listen to the hum of the traffic in the background. This is amazing. This is magic. This experience. You can become content with it. And once you learn that contentment, not wanting to be anywhere other than you are, you can practice that when you're walking through the garden. You can practice that when you're having your breakfast or your lunch. I was just so content just to be sitting here, just eating my meal. I'm just so content just to having this one cup of tea. Just so content just by sitting here and listening to a Dhamma discussion. And then you overcome this restlessness, always looking for something else. You train in contentment, but be careful, because if you want things to be perfect before you're content, you'll still be restless. That's the other part of restlessness. I'll get everything perfect, and then I'll rest. I can only be content when my whole life is just all settled and all the problems are dealt with. And you just can't do that. People keep asking me. They've been asking me for 14 years, or before asking Ajahn, when's the monastery going to be finished? When's the monastery going to be finished? And we used to tell the joke, it is finished. Every night when we finish, the monastery's finished. The following morning when we get our tools out, we start again. It's finished every night. What do you mean it's finished every night? There's so much things to be done. We've done our work that day, we leave it, let it go. Even though it's not perfect, we make it perfect by accepting it as it was. And this is how you can find contentment, how you can find rest. Not making everything perfect first, but just accepting imperfections. Being content with the imperfect. Not being content with the perfect, anyone can do that. Being content with the imperfect. So you've got mozzie biting you. To be content with one mozzie biting you. Isn't it wonderful, there's one mozzie biting me? It could have been 10. Isn't it wonderful that sort of I'm sitting here just with pain in the legs? I could be having the Spanish Inquisition after me, torturing me. Isn't it wonderful? I can just sit here quietly. There's so many other busy things I could have to do. Just to be content with imperfection is how you can be content. Because you'll never be content with perfection, because perfection will never arrive. Anyway, next question. Could you please give us a recap as the do's and don'ts of meditation posture? Is poor posture in meditation likely to contribute to poor results and failure to reach the really deep levels of meditation? Thank you. Posture is not important. Sometimes this is not the usual way which teachers can talk. But I mentioned this to someone today in the interview period, that once that, I think many of you know this story, I had a fever, typhus fever, was in hospital feeling really miserable, and lying on side, semi-fetus position. It wasn't at all what you call a meditation posture. Because I was just so fed up with feeling awful, I decided to really do my best meditation and got into a very deep meditation state. From that time onwards I realised that posture is not important. You can get into deep meditation in any posture, sometimes the most ridiculous postures, as long as you can forget about your body. However, at the beginning of meditation, it's nice to be able to sit in a position where you can be reasonably pain-free, where you don't have to move the body for a long period of time. Because if you have to keep moving the body, it disturbs the mind. So that's why sitting on a cushion on the floor is really good, on a stool is good, on a chair is good, anywhere is good. As long as you can keep mindfulness and to not have too many aches and pains in the body. Of course, someone then suggests, well, can I bring my bed in, please? And the trouble with laying down in meditation, unless you're very careful, you start snoring. So that's really the don'ts of posture, because laying down psychologically is the sleeping posture. So that's why it's not a really good posture to sit in, to meditate in. Other than that, the other postures are really good. And I said to quite a few people already that if your legs are getting sore, your knees are really very painful and your back is aching, go and sit on a chair. Not only is it good for your meditation, it's great for overcoming your pride. Because you can see how painful pride is. Because you sit on a chair and you can get some lovely meditation. So all the wise people are sitting on the chairs at the back there.
All the stupid ones are still sitting on the floor in great ache and great pain. So you're not here to learn how to sit on the floor. This is not a learning how to sit on the floor meditation weekend or retreat. It's learning how to meditate and make your mind peaceful. So it doesn't matter if it's on the chair. So that's about posture. And last question, is fear a part of ill will or worry? It seems to have something in common with both. Is fear part of ill will or worry? The worry of the hindrances is basically the worry about something you've done wrong. Usually like a fault in one's precepts causes that worry coming up. But basically the fear which comes up in meditation, I would say it's more closely related to the first hindrance of kamacchanda, sensory desire. You get so attached to that world of the five senses and to your body. But when it starts to disappear, it's like a fear of losing something very, very dear to you. Because fear, you can always identify fear is like the anticipation of losing something, which you think is very, very important. That's where fear arises from. And if you can realize that you don't own anything, there's no one there to do any owning. Even this body is just part of nature. When nature wants it back, it will take it back. And the mind is the same. All your intelligence, all your smartness, it's all just going to be taken away. So when you've own nothing, you're not afraid of anything. Someone comes along, they want to take your life. Okay, it's my time to go, off you go. You're not afraid of dying, because you're not attached to this body. It's not as important. It's obviously useful, but it's not so important. Just like your car, your vehicle, it's useful for you. You're not going to sort of risk your life to save your car. No, same way, you're not going to risk happiness to save this body. Or if, for me as a young person, one of the biggest fears was someone coming to take over my mind. If some sort of demon or devil comes up to me and said, I've come to take over your mind, I say, okay, you can have it. Or if some devil comes up and says, I want your soul, and he said, I'll give you, £1,000, $1,000 for your soul. That's a bargain, because $1,000 is real, the soul is just an illusion. I'll get the bargain. You're not afraid of losing anything, so you're not afraid that devil comes up here, a demon comes up here, and you can't make you afraid. So is a fear part of ill will or worry? Fear is part of delusion. You're afraid of losing something which you think belongs to you, and it's usually a fear which is part of kamacchanda. And I don't really think like ill will.